This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you are a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. Before I start talking anything sports, I want to remind you all of a couple of things that we would greatly appreciate if you could do. First of all, do not forget to subscribe to the podcast if you aren't subscribed to the show already. You can subscribe to the podcast by going to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever app or website you are using to listen to this episode. Click on the show's homepage and click that either plus button or follow, depending on what app you are using. That would make you a subscriber to the show. That way you can get those alerts and notifications on your phone, on your laptop, on your watch, on whatever device you might be listening to this episode on. And again, if you subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Podbean, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, whatever it may be, you'll get those alerts on your phone whenever we drop a new episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast here at the GSMC Podcast Network. And again, you can be one of the first people to listen to a new episode when we release it. The second thing we would greatly appreciate you guys doing is leaving us a 5-star review or just a positive review in general in the comment section or the review section of this show's page on that same app or website you are listening to this episode on. You don't have to write us a huge comprehensive review or anything like that, but if you could either do that or leave us a 5-star review, we would greatly appreciate that as well. And finally, do not forget to also follow us on all social media platforms. You can find us primarily on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We love interacting with you guys on there. Specifically, on our Twitter page, we like to talk to you guys about the new trending sports news. I'm going to get into the Tim Tebow signing in a few minutes here. And we love live tweeting games as well. So if you want to interact with us anymore, talking about the great world of sports and not just listening to the show, but actually talking to us on social media and things like that, don't forget to follow us on those great social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We have a fantastic show for you all today. We're going to do a lot of NBA talk towards the end of the show. The NBA playoffs are rapidly approaching. Teams have about 3-4 games left before the play-in tournament ensues between seeds 7 through 10 on both sides. And I want to talk about a lot of the teams who could potentially have to play in that play-in round game. I want to talk about the Boston Celtics later on in this episode, how their fall from grace has ensued, who should be held accountable. Should Danny Ainge, maybe even Brad Stevens, lose their jobs? I also want to talk about the Los Angeles Lakers. Could they potentially see Steph Curry in that play-in game? LeBron James is going to be held out again tonight. He's never really come back fully from that ankle injury, and who knows if he'll ever be 100% this season from it. I don't know if they want to see Steph Curry in round one. We'll talk about that later on in the show, as well as with the New York Knicks and Miami Heat, two other teams that are on the rise in the Eastern Conference. I want to talk about both of those teams as well at the end of today's show. And of course, we're also going to continue to break down the Aaron Rodgers situation, what's going on. I want to give you a team that maybe isn't being reported as much, but I think could be a dark horse candidate to land him. Green Bay also signed a free agent quarterback today. What does that mean? Does that mean they're signaling an Aaron Rodgers trade coming soon? And we'll break down that situation further. But we're going to start off with the major piece of NFL news that came out the other day, and that is Tim Tebow. Yes, Tim Tebow, the same guy from Tebow Time, praying on the sideline, doing all that awesome stuff for the Florida Gators, Denver Broncos, Jets, and Patriots for a little bit. You all know who Tim Tebow is. Tebow Time is back in the National Football League. We had heard that the Jaguars had brought him in for a workout/tryout. Things sort of mulled over. Urban Meyer decided to pull the trigger, and Tim Tebow is back in the National Football League at age 33. He will be playing a new position in the NFL. He is going to switch to tight end and play for the Jacksonville Jaguars under head coach Urban Meyer, who he obviously knows going back to his Florida days. Tim Tebow is also from Jacksonville, grew up around the area, was a Jaguar fan growing up. Again, this move makes a lot of sense for a bunch of reasons. It also is perplexing for a bunch of reasons. The number one thing people are going to point out is that Tim Tebow hasn't played since 2012. And that is a scary thing, right? You don't see guys make NFL comebacks like this. Dudes don't sit for years and years and come back. This isn't like when Michael Jordan retired, went to baseball, came back to the Bulls. Nothing like this. Tim Tebow has been out of the National Football League for about, 8 to 10 years now, which is a really, really long time to be out of the NFL. And again, maybe in some other leagues, it would be easier to retire and come back from. And I'm not saying that people haven't done it in the NFL. Of course, Brett Favre did it. Guys have unretired all the time. But in this league, with how demanding it is on your body, for you to be 10 years older than you were before, you didn't really work in the NFL to your fullest potential at age 22, 23. They asked Tim Tebow, actually, in the NFL to switch tight ends earlier. When he was 23, 24 years old, I think even when he was in Denver, they obviously had won that playoff game against the Steelers, if you remember. They were bringing in Peyton Manning, the quarterback, and Tim Tebow was on his way out of Denver. They had asked him, hey, do you maybe want to be tight end, be a part of this team? No. Tim Tebow exclusively wanted to play quarterback. Back then, I believe it was, the 2012, 2013 season? I think 2011 is the year he won that playoff game against Pittsburgh. They bring in Peyton Manning. He's going to get traded. John Elway wants to do right by Tim Tebow because he didn't necessarily play himself out of Denver. They just happened to stumble across one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time and Peyton Manning and couldn't pass up on the opportunity. So they told Tim, hey, we got two teams that are potentially interested in trading for your services. Let's talk about it. It was the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New York Jets. Tim Tebow, back in 2013, could have been a Jacksonville Jaguar like he is today. Instead, he chose the New York Jets over his hometown team for a bigger market, more fame, etc. People have said that Tim Tebow is fame hungry, that he's always trying to be in the spotlight, that he can't just go away. And I understand why people say that. He obviously stepped away from the game for a long time, was an analyst for a little bit, then tried a baseball career I think he was in the AA league for the New York Mets. Kind of worked out, kind of didn't. Then these rumors come around that he's back in the NFL, and now he's been signed to a 1-year deal. I'm assuming it's going to be the minimum. I don't think he'll get paid any more than that to go play for his former coach, Urban Meyer, down in Florida again. And the immediate name that everybody kept throwing out there was Taysom Hill. And I understand why. But I don't think Tim Tebow is actually going to run the exact same package that Taysom Hill runs with New Orleans. I think there's another name to keep an eye on as well, but I don't think there's actually I hate to say a pro comparison here. I'm talking about Tebow essentially like he's a prospect. He's 33 years old, former quarterback, but he's playing an entirely new position. And when you watch Tim Tebow highlights, when you break down Tim Tebow film, you can essentially throw out any play where he's throwing the ball because he's not going to be doing that for Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence is going to be the starting quarterback for that team week 1, no questions asked. Could I see Tebow maybe doing some trick play passes or some trickery in the offense? Sure, but even then, Tim Tebow doesn't have a cannon of an arm. We've seen trick plays happen in the National Football League where a receiver or a tight end gets the ball in the backfield and throws a absolutely massive throw downfield because they have that arm strength. Tim Tebow's never really had that arm strength, never really had that accuracy, so I don't know actually how much throwing of the football Tim Tebow's going to be doing in Jacksonville, nor do I think he expects to be throwing the football a lot in Jacksonville. I think he is truly giving this tight end thing a shot, but I think putting Tim Tebow as a tight end is a little bit naive. I don't think he's exclusively going to be playing tight end. I think he's going to be an offensive weapon for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they just have to put a position on him, so they chose tight end. I really do believe that Tim Tebow is going to be more of just an offensive weapon. They're going to use him in the pass game. I think they could even use him in a goal line sort of short yardage running back situation. I mean, Tim Tebow lined up in the backfield behind Trevor Lawrence, a 6'6" quarterback. I mean, and you need what? Let's say it's a 4th and 2, 4th and 3. I wouldn't hate the idea of handing the ball to Tim Tebow there. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't discredit it. I would understand where you're coming from. Tim Tebow is 6'3", 6'4". He's going to be probably 220-ish pounds. And again, he's going to probably be built bigger than he was during his quarterbacking days. His game doesn't necessarily have to be built off speed, things like that. What I'm waiting for now is sort of a video to come out on Twitter or something like that of Tim Tebow running routes, things like that. I want to get to the comparisons because everybody wants to compare him to Taysom Hill. I think there are some things that Taysom Hill does for the New Orleans Saints that Tim Tebow can do. I see some jet sweep actions. I see some direct snap actions. You can totally run the Wildcat with Tim Tebow in a goal line situation. I totally expect a left-handed jump pass to come out for a touchdown, maybe even as soon as week 1 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But for the people saying, he's not going to make the roster, he's at the bottom. Yes, he is. The NFL is a relationship-based league. Head coaches, when they are hired, immediately hire their friends, immediately hire their coworkers from before, regardless of scheme fit or anything like that, because those are dudes they can trust. Urban Meyer doesn't bring Tim Tebow along to the Jacksonville Jaguars if he doesn't want him, at minimum, in the locker room. I understand the appeal of that as well. Tim Tebow as a leader is unquestioned. We've all seen the hype-up tapes, things like that, his game speeches, things like that as well. Could he be a nice mentor for Trevor Lawrence? Maybe not at playing the quarterback position. I wouldn't want Tim Tebow teaching Trevor Lawrence anything, considering he wasn't the greatest quarterback in the world, to say the least. But to teach Trevor Lawrence about how to be a leader of men, how to get a locker room to respond to you, how to be the captain of a team, sure, I could totally see why Tim Tebow would be valuable in that aspect. And sure, he can give you a couple of nice plays. I'm sure he can run. I'm sure he's still athletic. He's still fast. He's been in a professional sports setting for the last couple of years. He's been working on being a professional athlete just in baseball. And again, he's played football before. He knows the game. He still analyzes it, specifically college football for ESPN. He probably doesn't do that anymore, obviously, now with the contract. But I expect Tim Tebow to be used by the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't think he'll be used as frequently as Taysom Hill's used for the Saints. I don't think he can handle that snap count at age 33. And again, he isn't in probably baseball shape right now. You got to get in football shape. I'm not saying that you have to be in less shape to play baseball than football. It's just different bodies. You build differently. You work out differently. You are at a different weight. You just have a different mentality. You're either learning to play baseball and building your body to be a professional baseball player, or you're building your body to be a professional football player. Tebow will get his body probably back in shape. Urban Meyer did a whole podcast with Chris Collinsworth saying that Tebow was in great shape. He was an immaculate competitor, and we know about all these things. I'm sure Tim Tebow is still cut, looks like an NFL quarterback / NFL player. I don't think he'll play tight end. I think it'll be like a tight end, running back, fullback, Wildcat quarterback hybrid. I expect to see the Wildcat a ton. I expect him to get the ball in the backfield a bunch of times whenever his number is called, and I could totally see him running some drag routes on the other side of the field for some misdirection plays. However, I don't see Trevor Lawrence ever throwing up a jump ball to Tim Tebow. He's about 6'3", 6'4", on a good day. And again, the two guys who have really made the quarterback, the tight end position switch really work in the NFL are two guys. Obviously Taysom Hill, but I want you guys to keep an eye on Logan Thomas for the Washington football team. Was a quarterback out of Virginia Tech, got drafted by the Cardinals, I think, to be a quarterback, didn't really pan out, went to Buffalo, changed tight end. Now he's in the Washington football team, had over 600 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. Here's the difference between Logan Thomas and Tim Tebow, though. Logan Thomas made the transition late in his career. He made it when he was about 27, 28, 29 years old. He decided to be a tight end. This most recent season when he was 29 years old was his breakout year, quote-unquote, as being an NFL tight end. And I would say Tebow would be able to do that. Again, the age is not that different between those guys. I understand that Tebow took a decade off of football. Logan Thomas did not. He's obviously been in football the last couple of seasons now, and also played college football, went right to the pros, no gap or anything like that. But Logan Thomas is also 6'6", Tim Tebow 6'4". You can throw up jump balls to Logan Thomas, and that's what the Washington football team did. But they also did a lot of misdirection plays where everybody would think the play is going right, but Logan Thomas would be sitting in the back corner of the end zone all the way to the left. Misdirection play. I expect to see that from Tim Tebow. Again, there's totally going to be a jump pass to somebody. Who knows when it's going to be. He's totally going to do a bunch of Wildcat stuff, and I think he's going to be a good locker room presence. Let's also not discount the fact that the NFL is a business. Sean Confor, who's the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, not the most earning revenue team in the NFL, not the most popular team in the NFL. Tim Tebow's going to put butts in the seats in Jacksonville, especially in Gator Town. You reunite Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow, which was essentially the greatest part of Florida Gators football ever. You put them in Jacksonville, the prime and heart of Gator country. That's how you sell out fans. That's how you sell out Jacksonville Stadium. That's what the Jaguars need too, not just to win football games. They need money. It's a business. Tebow jerseys are going to be flying off the rack. I might grab one. I mean, Tim Tebow was one of my personal favorite players growing up. Do I expect him to be an incredible impact player? Do I expect him to be one of the top, 15 to 20 players on the team? Probably not. But he's going to get some significant snaps. There's definitely going to be some cool moments and some awesome plays. And I think overall this is good for the league. It's another reason to watch. It's another reason to turn on Jacksonville. I'm definitely going to turn on their week 1 game now, not just to see how Trevor Lawrence performs, but I want to see what Tim Tebow does at age 33 in the NFL. He's listed as a tight end. I don't see him doing a lot of blocking on the line.
I see him used in the pass game, but honestly, I see him as just a running back. I really do. Or a wildcat quarterback, occasionally an option in the pass game on screens or something like that. Any play that Tim Tebow is going to be a part of for the Jacksonville Jaguars this season is going to be a quick one. They're going to want to get him the ball quickly. I don't think he's going to be a part of a lot of slow developing plays where he eventually gets the ball. Screen passes, trick plays, jet sweeps, wildcat quarterbacking, maybe just straight up direct snap handoffs sort of thing on the goal line or fourth and short situations, and maybe a couple of shallow crosses, drag routes, basic stuff for the tight end to get him the ball quickly. Again, instead of calling Tim Tebow a tight end, let's say he's an offensive weapon for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think he'll also be a massive leadership component. And if there's anybody that knows how to use him, it's Urban Meyer. But to answer the question, would Tim Tebow get a shot in the NFL with any other team besides the Jacksonville Jaguars right now? No. And that does speak volumes where I do not believe Tim Tebow will have the exact impact that Taysom Hill and Logan Thomas have for their respective teams, guys who have made the quarterback to tight end switch. But I do think it's going to be a really, really awesome and fun story, and there'll definitely be some awesome Tebow moments as well. Again, that jump pass is totally coming, and I can't wait for it. All right, that's going to do it for this segment. On the other side of this short break, I want to break down some more news about the Aaron Rodgers situation, the Blake Bortles signing by the Green Bay Packers, where we go from here, and discuss a dark horse NFL team that I believe should be all over Aaron Rodgers. We'll get into all that great stuff right after this short break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masfred. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you are a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. I just finished giving you my initial thoughts on the Tim Tebow back to the NFL news. Again, he is signing a 1-year, most likely minimum contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars to allegedly play tight end, but again, I would label him more as an offensive weapon. Again, expecting to see him in some sort of cat packages, maybe some short crossing routes, nothing major. And again, I don't see him playing on the line a ton. Tight end is just a position that quarterbacks can make an easier transition to because, again, tight end's a quarterback's best friend, so they understand the game. Do I expect him to be like the best tight end on Jacksonville? No, I don't think he'll be leading the tight end room in receptions, touchdowns, yards, any of that. No, I don't think he'll be Trevor Lawrence's security blanket, none of that. But I do think he'll be a fun player and a good locker room presence. And if anybody knows Tim Tebow, how to utilize him in the best possible way, it's probably Urban Meyer, who did that with him at Florida for years and years as well. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Just another reason to watch a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars. And again, this NFL offseason keeps getting better and better with some news and rumors like that. I want to transition now to, of course, the number one thing that is currently dominating the NFL offseason, and that is the Aaron Rodgers saga. We don't know where he's going, if he's going anywhere, but the Green Bay Packers might have tipped their hand today a little bit. Now, every team adds quarterbacks, adds arms, gets more, better at that position, things like that, when they don't have a superstar quarterback. You bring in veterans that are capable, that have won games in this league. Or sometimes when you have a superstar quarterback, you just bring in a guy to be an arm in camp. The Green Bay Packers today signed a quarterback, and it's Blake Bortles, a guy who is an established player in this league. And again, there's a lot of memes about Blake Bortles, but he's a real player in this league. He's a competent backup, was the backup for the Rams most recently. Obviously, you probably know him from his time with the Jacksonville Jaguars, in which he went to an AFC championship game there against the New England Patriots. There's a lot of memes about Blake Bortles, but in my opinion, he's a capable enough backup in this league, and he has won games in this league before. The Green Bay Packers decided to sign him. Now, this is why this is interesting. Because the Green Bay Packers, a majority, if not all, of last season only had 2 active quarterbacks on game days. It wasn't even Jordan Love. It was the backup, I'm blanking on his name right now, and Aaron Rodgers. So they had Aaron Rodgers as backup, which was not Jordan Love at the time. He was inactive most of the season for just learning purposes, coaching purposes, things like that. Held the clipboard, had the earbud in, everything like that, learning the playbook. And they only had 2 active quarterbacks. Now, assuming that Matt LaFleur keeps that same energy going into the season, probably going to have 2 active quarterbacks on game day. We know that Jordan Love's going to be one of the active quarterbacks this year, whether he's the starter or the backup, depending on the Aaron Rodgers situation. And if you were going to have a guy just to bring in as a guy, an arm in camp who can be inactive for you on most game days, isn't really going to see the field just for practices purposes, runs the scout team, I don't think you would go sign Blake Bortles, who would cost more money than a guy who's like an undrafted free agent or a guy who hasn't really been established in this league. Blake Bortles' veteran minimum contract is going to pay a couple of $1 million. So you're paying legitimate backup quarterback money for him, yet granted it's a 1-year deal. I think Green Bay probably tipped their hand. They're a smart organization. They've been through this before with a guy like Brett Favre. They know exactly how this situation plays out. They probably know better than anybody how this exact situation plays out. I think they probably just tipped their hand saying, we understand Aaron is not going to be coming back next year. We'll start listening to some trade offers. So I do want to break down teams that you've already heard before, and I talked about in my last episode. So I am going to recap what I was saying about, teams like Denver, Vegas, and Miami who are potentially interested. But I do want to give you a dark horse Aaron Rodgers team. But let's start off with those main teams. Everyone is obviously talking about Aaron Rodgers to potentially the Denver Broncos. So for the Denver Broncos, honestly, I talked about it a lot in my last episode. This situation, though, to me screams almost too good to be true. Just like I mentioned for the Green Bay Packers, that they have been in this exact situation before with Brett Favre. They know what it's like when a quarterback wants to get out of that particular organization. And they know it's extremely hard to make amends between quarterback and front office difficulties and issues. Aaron Rodgers did come out and say, look, he didn't come out and say, but according to reports, if they just fire their general manager, Brian Gutekunst, that he will apparently come back to Green Bay. However, Green Bay is not the type of organization to fire their general manager like that or something like that at all, or give player empowerment like that in that sense. They didn't do it for Brett. They're not going to do it for Aaron. They drafted Jordan Love for a reason. He was the backup plan. They knew this was going to happen at some point. Aaron is just accelerating that time process. Denver makes too much sense because, again, as Green Bay had to deal with this with Brett Favre, and they've been in this exact situation before, Denver has also been in this exact same situation before, and where they got one of the all-time great quarterbacks at the end of his career and made something happen. They won a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning, obviously, the year before that. Peyton threw 50 touchdowns. Extremely successful career in Denver. And Peyton was coming off of that terrible neck injury and also probably doesn't have the same amount of juice that Aaron has left. Peyton was showing real signs of decline. Aaron just won an MVP. So, again, Denver is a little bit too good to be true, especially with the young receiver Jerry Jeudy, who could potentially be traded over there. They have the good line. They have the good run game. They have the good weapons. They have the good defense. I think Vic Fangio is a good enough coach. Again, the only downside is that this is the team that everybody's talking about. And traditionally in sports, when a guy wants to go somewhere specific, he usually doesn't end up going to the team that everybody immediately thinks of first. The only one that I can really think of was when Anthony Davis wanted to go be a Los Angeles Laker. He ended up being a Los Angeles Laker. Usually, when players want out via trade from an organization they've been with for a long time, they usually don't go to their number one destination in the NFL. It's usually a surprise team that comes in, swoops in, gets a guy, overpays, whatever it may be. That's how the National Football League traditionally works, which means that Aaron Rodgers in this situation would not be going to Denver, that there would be some sort of surprise team, like I'll talk about later, or a team like Vegas or Miami would go in and swoop in and nab him. But at the end of the day, I don't think that there is a better fit for Aaron Rodgers than the Denver Broncos. Again, you want to talk about stability in the ownership group, in the front office, being on the West Coast, being in the AFC, having the weapons to compete, a winning organization with a history of winning. All of the boxes checked off for Aaron are there. The only downside for going to play for the Denver Broncos is that you have to share a division with Patrick Mahomes twice a year. You also deal with the LA Chargers twice a year, who are on the come up. And the Las Vegas Raiders are a tough out because of their high-powered offense. But Aaron Rodgers is used to playing against the highest level of competition. He's made deep playoff runs multiple times. He hasn't necessarily, done the best in those games or won a lot of those games, but he's used to that level of competition. And again, Aaron Rodgers is the MV freaking P. He's the best player in the world right now, according to most recent, awards and everything like that. I'd still say Mahomes is better than him, but still, Denver just makes too much sense. And again, when you look at the trade packages, you can add some picks, you can add Jerry Jeudy, maybe even a guy like Chubb is involved. Who knows? And Green Bay needs things that they want to obviously stay relevant and stay competing. Green Bay never wants to be bad. They always, want to be in that we're competing for the division or at least a wild card stance. They're a historical franchise. They're a proud organization. They always have a backup plan. And then when this happens, Green Bay can recuperate some assets from Aaron. They can get a guy like Jerry Jeudy from Denver and a bunch of first-round picks. And you could say that deal is worth it. They might take a step back now, but a couple steps in the future if Jordan Love can play. And that's what this really all comes down to, is can Jordan Love play? That's what it comes down for the Green Bay Packers. The other two teams that I've already talked about, the Las Vegas Raiders, Miami Dolphins. The Las Vegas Raiders keep being in the quarterback market, but have never actually pulled the trigger on getting a new quarterback. John Gruden has the most power as an NFL head coach in his organization, probably in the league besides maybe Bill Belichick, but even Robert Kraft has told Bill Belichick a couple of times, no, you can't do that, specifically on the Brady front. So, could John Gruden go to a guy like Mike Mayock, who is having some issues with his scouts and drafting, and be like, we're trading all these picks, we're getting Aaron Rodgers? Sure. If there was any organization that was going to give up 5 to 7 or 3 to 5 first-round picks for a guy at the end of his career, Aaron Rodgers, it would be crazy Chucky John Gruden and the Las Vegas Raiders. They're opening up that new stadium with fans that are finally coming back. They play in a division with Mahomes and Herbert, and Denver is a good team that really just needs a quarterback. Vegas does not want to be last in that division. They don't want to be the boring team in that division either. Aaron Rodgers and John Gruden would be absolutely electric. Here's why I don't see it happening. I don't think John Gruden and Aaron Rodgers would work from a personality standpoint. John Gruden is a very demanding intellectual coach. Aaron is a very intellectual person, yet he sort of gives off the vibe as, I'm the smartest person in the room. John Gruden sort of has that same vibe. That's not necessarily a negative thing. I'm not calling them either of them bad people or anything like that, but I don't know how that dynamic would work. We've seen Aaron have issues with guys like Mike McCarthy, and now he might be having issues with guys like Matt LaFleur, Brian Gutekunst, people in the Green Bay organization. So I don't see how that would work. And again, I don't see Miami either, because every single move the Miami Dolphins have made this offseason, adding Jalen Waddle, adding a left tackle Liam Eichenberg, adding a safety, getting new offensive coordinators in the building, more speed weapons, have all been to build around Tua Tagovailoa in the system he ran at Alabama, which was a spread 4 vertical offense. Trent Dilfer has come out and said, I believe that Tua Tagovailoa is the best 4 verts passer in the NFL at any level. He's the best 4 verticals quarterback he has ever seen. The Dolphins clearly take that to heart. Add Will Fuller, add Jalen Waddle. They'll be running 4 verticals a lot this season. That's not Aaron Rodgers' game, specifically recently with Green Bay. So I don't see it with Miami. I understand why people have made the connection. If you gave Aaron Rodgers, Brian Flores this defense, crazy things could happen. Super Bowls could be one potentially. But Miami seems pretty locked in on Tua. They've passed on every quarterback opportunity they've been given since getting Tua Tagovailoa, and they've had plenty. They had the 3rd overall pick at one point. They could have stand pat and selected, Justin Fields, Trey Lance. They could have had him. They did not want him. They think Tua Tagovailoa is better. And they did their due diligence. They looked at Trey Lance tape. I'm sure they looked at Justin Fields tape, Mac Jones tape, everybody. And they determined that it was best for the organization going forward that they were going to go with Tua Tagovailoa. They never gained super or a ton of traction on a, Deshaun Watson trade. That was never really concrete. We never see a concrete offer be reported or anything like that before all the off-the-field stuff happened. So I don't think they would be in on the Aaron Rodgers front either. But one team that nobody is necessarily talking about, I've seen a couple of people mention it, that I think should be all in on Aaron Rodgers, the New York Football Giants. That division is cruddy. I think the Cowboys are going to win it. Maybe Washington can win it if Fitzmagic is Fitzmagic and not Fitztragic. Could a team like New York win it with Daniel Jones? Sure. They have the weaponry. They have the defense. I think they have the coach. I think Joe Judge is a great coach. It's all on Daniel Jones. And if you gave Aaron Rodgers this team, Saquon Barkley, Kenny Golladay, Evan Ingram, other offensive weapons, Joe Judge, that defense, I think awesome things could happen. And I really do believe that the New York Giants, who gained a couple of extra picks with that Chicago trade down, and again, Dave Gettleman is usually not an ultra-aggressive GM, I would go and give my best offer for Aaron Rodgers. Because if you put Aaron Rodgers in that division,
you would win that division easily. It wouldn't be close. The New York Giants could win 12 to 14 games next year and get 5 of those wins just off of the division alone. They would annihilate Philly twice. They would beat Washington twice, in my opinion. And they would probably beat Dallas twice, too, with their cruddy defense. And again, they just added Kenny Golladay. Evan Ingram's on that team. They added John Ross, a speedy receiver. They already have some guys like Sterling Shepard there as well. And Slayton there is there too. And of course, Saquon Barkley's coming back. That offensive line is improving. That defense is legitimate under Joe Judge. They beat teams like Seattle late in the year and really completely shut down their offense. Aaron Rodgers make a lot of sense. And I think they are a dark horse team that could come out of nowhere and add him because of their draft capital and some of their young players that they could include on the defensive end. Things like that as well. Why I could see it not happening, they're both in the NFC. Does Green Bay set in stone on moving Aaron to a team that they will never see again? Potentially. And that could be sort of a snag in the thread there if New York was desperately trying to acquire a guy like Aaron Rodgers. But I think that is a dark horse team. Again, Denver makes the most logical sense, but I don't know if they're actually going to pull the trigger. Things like that. We'll see. That's going to do it for this segment. On the other side of this short break, I want to break down everything Aaron Rodgers, sort of, but from the Packers side, that after Aaron has moved on, where do they go from here? There's an interesting Davante Adams quote, and I want to talk about what it really comes down to for the Green Bay Packers going forward. And the NFL release schedule release was today as well. We have some really interesting games, including when Tom Brady is making his return to Foxborough. I'll give you some of the more interesting games in the schedules that have already been leaked and what I think about them and why I think they could be really, really awesome games to watch. We're going to all that great stuff right after this short break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masfred. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you are a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. I just finished breaking down some of the teams that have been rumored to be interested in Aaron Rodgers, and I gave you my major dark horse team that I believe should go all in on him, and I do believe that team should be the New York Giants. I think a culmination of their draft picks that they picked up after trading down with Chicago on draft night, on top of some of the young players on defense they could incorporate, maybe even on offensive line too, that could really bolster a trade offer that could put them ahead of a team like Denver, Vegas, in the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes. And if you put Aaron Rodgers in that division, he would win that division fairly easily, in my opinion, with that terrible defensive division besides Washington. And I think some awesome things could be happening for the New York Giants if they got a guy like Aaron Rodgers, the former MVP or recent MVP, is what I should really say. I want to continue my conversation with that and talk about some of the schedule release stuff that came out. But I want to talk about the Packers side, because a lot of people were talking about, where is Aaron going to go and how will it work out for Aaron and everything like that. I want to talk about how it's going to work out for the Green Bay Packers, because they, again, are losing their franchise quarterback. Like I mentioned, they've been down this road before. The fans have been down this road before, so maybe they have a little bit more trust in the Packer organization than they did the last time. If you remember when Favre was moved, people were outraged, didn't think Aaron was ready. And even then, Aaron Rodgers struggled his rookie year after sitting multiple seasons. So now, Jordan Love, who may or may not be ready, and I think if the Packers don't believe he is ready, because again, they offered Aaron a contract extension. They do not want Aaron to leave. And And I think they think that Jordan Love could be a guy who sits for 2, maybe even 3 years. They signed Blake Bortles to a 1-year, probably veteran minimum deal. Now, and if Aaron was traded, there'd obviously be an open quarterback position between Love and Bortles. And even if Love isn't ready, I think he would beat out Bortles just because they need to see what they have in him. And it all comes down to one thing, really, for the Green Bay Packers the next couple of seasons, and it really could be a franchise-changing decision. It is a franchise-changing decision. They're losing Aaron Rodgers, probably the most talented quarterback that they've ever had, probably the best in terms of just the quarterback position that they've ever had in their rich franchise history. And if Jordan Love is a bust and doesn't pan out well, it could set their franchise back years, because Davante Adams came out and said that, yes, if Aaron Rodgers leaving would obviously impact his potential free agent situation next offseason on if he would return to Green Bay or not. And it all comes down to one thing. Can Jordan Love play? Because if Jordan Love can play, and if Jordan Love is good, he doesn't have to be Aaron Rodgers good, he doesn't have to win the MVP, but if he shows signs of, hey, I am somebody in this league, I am someone who you could develop or will one day become a great quarterback in this league. I need to see moments. I need to see big-time throws. I need to see the wow factor. I need to see the it factor. I need to see the leadership. I need to see the command of the huddle, and I need to see him win some games. This division is not the toughest division in the world. You have the rebuilding Lions, the Chicago Bears, which who knows what they really are at this point. Will Justin Fields start? Will it be Dalton? Is Ryan Pace on the hot seat? Is he not? And of course, you have the Minnesota Vikings, who also just selected a quarterback, Kellen Mond. How will Kirk Cousins play with that guy breathing down his neck? Who knows? They could still win that division. They don't have to win 13, 14 games they did last year, but can you win 10? Can Jordan Love come in with this absolutely stacked NFC championship roster, Super Bowl caliber roster, come in, run the system that is, quarterback friendly. It's a Shanahan-esque system that comes from Kyle Shanahan originally. Obviously, Matt LaFleur is the one who implemented it in Green Bay. QB friendly system. You have a stud left side of the offensive line, at least. Robert Tonyan, who's a really, really good tight end, vertical stretcher of the field. Obviously, Davante Adams is there. Devin Funchess is there now, who opted out last year from COVID. They drafted Amari Rodgers, a really nice gadget / I think could be really, really good slot player for Green Bay. You already know that Aaron Jones re-signed there. And their defense has some pieces like Jair Alexander and Kenny Clark. They drafted Stokes, the corner out of Georgia, in the first round. It's a real football team with or without Aaron Rodgers. They can win games. Matt LaFleur can coach. He can win games. They drafted Jordan Love for a reason. They believe he can succeed Aaron Rodgers, and now is going to be the time to prove it when Aaron Rodgers is eventually moved to a team like Denver, Vegas, New York, or maybe somewhere else. And again, it comes down to if Jordan Love can play. Because if he can't, if Jordan Love goes out there, stinks it up, has a terrible rookie season, completely tanks the entire Green Bay Packers year, they go 6-10 or something like that, and have a top 10 pick, Jordan Love is done. They will move off of him. And if they don't, a guy like Davante Adams might take his talents somewhere else in free agency, which then 2 out of your top 3 players in your franchise the last 4 or 5 seasons will have left within 365 days of each other. And that's how you get fired if you're the general manager of the Green Bay Packers. That's how you lose your job. That is a recipe to do that. So I don't think he's going to get fired now, even though apparently, according to reports, Aaron would come back if Brian Gutekunst was fired. They're not going to fire him, I don't think. I think Aaron will eventually be moved. If San Francisco and LA didn't already make their quarterback moves, I think a deal would already be done. If Trey Lance wasn't already a 49er and Stafford wasn't already a Ram, I think Aaron Rodgers would be playing for one of those 2 teams right now. I really do believe that. More likely, maybe, the Rams than probably more likely the 49ers than the Rams. Again, on draft night, it's been reported that Aaron was telling teammates, family members, people that he knows, friends, hey, I'm not coming back, and I think I might even be traded tonight. Hasn't happened yet. Aaron Rodgers, I believe, has played his last snap as a Green Bay Packer quarterback, and I think Jordan Love's time is now, and I think they brought in Blake Bortles to back up Jordan Love. He has worked with the offensive coordinator there in Green Bay in Jacksonville. He knows the system. He can run it, and that's great. But I think they need to know what they have in Jordan Love, because if he stinks it up next year and they have a bad record, there's a new quarterback class coming in next year, and Green Bay will have to be all over that to try and convince guys like Davante Adams to stay in that area of Wisconsin that is considered no man's land for some money. So it's going to be interesting to see how the whole situation plays out. I do think Aaron eventually will be traded, but the Green Bay Packers really are relying so much on Jordan Love to set the tone for their franchise, really, the next 5 to 10 years. If Jordan Love goes out there, balls out, wins the division, wins 10 or 11 games, shows people that he is at least capable of being the next quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, big things can happen for them, and they can continue on the current path that they are on, get out of underneath the Aaron Rodgers contract, in theory have a younger, younger, livelier quarterback to work with for the next 10 years, it resets the quarterback financial room, obviously, as well. Gives them a ton of cap space to maybe go in on a defense or something like that as well. So if Jordan Love can play, all things are good in Green Bay. Devontae Adams would stay. Aaron Jones was already re-signed. You can spend some more money in free agency on that defense. They already are a team that relatively drafts and develops well. But if Jordan Love can't play, then everything goes to hell. Devontae Adams leaves, and they have a complete quarterback dilemma, and they probably have a new general manager too. So that's the two ways it can go, and that's why it's sports. That's why it's so much fun to watch the NFL and all of these storylines and things like that. And I cannot wait to watch how this Aaron Rodgers versus Green Bay Packer saga unfolds. I think it's going to be awesome no matter what way it ends. I want to talk about a couple of scheduled games for Week 1 and beyond that I'm really keeping an eye on. Number 1 is Tom Brady's return to Foxborough, Week 4, Sunday Night Football, Tampa Bay to Foxborough. I'm hoping we see Brady versus Mac Jones. I think this will lead me into sort of the Mac Jones and versus Cam Newton debate. I am so excited to see Brady versus Belichick Sunday Night Football. I think the viewership on that game might get just as many views as the Super Bowl does. I think the ad competition to have some ads on that game are going to be ridiculous. And I think NBC is going to make a ton of money with having that game. We have never seen in the NFL something like this happen, where a guy or a partnership that is so iconic and so historically great in sports break off like this, and then both of these guys who are uber successful, and Brady, who obviously is coming off a Super Bowl on top of all that, going to Foxborough, it's going to be an absolutely electric and crazy game. I'm hoping that we see Mac Jones play. The Patriots' schedule is interesting to say the least. They face Miami in Week 1. I think Cam's going to get the nod to start. I think Bill has a lot of respect for Cam, likes Cam's mentality, likes his leadership style, likes his physicality. But I think everything throwing-wise that Cam Newton can do, Mac Jones can do it all and probably better. Mac Jones is more accurate. I think Mac Jones probably has a livelier arm at this point. He definitely throws a better touch than Cam does. Definitely has better ball placement than Cam does too. Cam brings that athletic sort of aspect that Mac Jones does not bring. And what's going to be fascinating to see the Patriots in this offseason is because usually teams draft a quarterback, and the backup to that quarterback, if it's a veteran or not, usually runs a similar style system or a similar play style to the rookie they just drafted. That's what the veteran component is there for. The two quarterbacks for the New England Patriots right now play completely different styles. Mac Jones plays just like Tom Brady, Jimmy Garoppolo. Quick reads, get the ball out fast. I know where to place the ball. I know who to get it to, when to get it to them, timing, rhythm, all that stuff. Cam Newton's not about that. Cam Newton is a physical runner. He's a downhill player. And you have to run a completely different offensive system depending on who your quarterback is in there. You have less deep throws when Cam's in the game, but you have more run plays and things like that as well. So it's going to be interesting to see who they go to, and it's going to be interesting to see what week Bill Belichick elects to make the change. Because when you go from Cam Newton to Mac Jones, you're not just changing quarterbacks, you're changing offensive systems, you're changing playbooks, you're changing game plans. And it's going to be almost essentially a completely different offense depending on who is the quarterback for the New England Patriots at any given moment during any given game. So it's going to be interesting to see, it's always a chess match between, the NFL versus that team and that coach of what's the perfect week to throw in a new quarterback, the rookie, assuming a guy doesn't get hurt or something like that. Obviously, a guy like Justin Herbert was just thrown in there. Baker Mayfield was just thrown in there. But look at the Miami Dolphins, for example. They identified a week that not a lot of people saw coming, that game versus the Rams at home. That's when they threw Tua Tagovailoa into the fire, right? I don't think Mac Jones is going to be handed the Week 1 job like Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson are being handed it to. But I don't think he's going to sit for a long extended period of time like Trey Lance and Kellen Mond are going to do that either. I think he falls right into that Justin Fields category where he is going to get some action his rookie year. The only question is when. And I think, unfortunately, we're not going to see Mac Jones by Week 4. I bet we'll see him in the Week 6 through 9 range, barring an injury or anything like that. But oh my God, I really, 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 really want to see Mac Jones versus Tom Brady, Sunday Night Football. Brady's return to Foxborough. I think it's going to be absolutely electric. I couldn't give you a prediction. It's so far away for now, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Some other interesting games that are Week 1, Tampa Bay versus the Cowboys is what's going to kick off the NFL season. I think that game will be electric. We get a rematch of the AFC Championship game between the Browns we get a rematch of that AFC playoff game between the Browns and the Chiefs. I think that game will be electric. I really do believe Miami versus New England is a fascinating game to watch in the 4 o'clock window, week 1. Could be Tua versus Mac Jones. How will the Miami Dolphins look in year 2 of all this? Jalen Waddle's debut, Mac Jones' potential debut. I think that game's also a lot of fun to watch too. So the NFL always kills it with the schedule release. They know what they're doing. They know when to place games and where and why. I think it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun this year. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to that Tampa Bay versus New England Patriot game in Foxborough. Week 4 this season, I believe it'll be on October 3rd. Going to be an absolute blast, and I can't wait to watch Brady versus Belichick. Probably the only time we're going to get to see it, if we're being honest, unless they meet in the Super Bowl or something crazy like that. All right, that's going to do it for this segment. On the other side of this final short break, I'll be addressing all of those NBA things I told you guys about at the beginning of this episode, including the Celtics, Heat, Lakers, and Knicks. We're into all that great stuff right after this final short break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you are a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. I just finished giving you my spiel on everything Aaron Rodgers versus Green Bay, but the Green Bay side of it, and my favorite game of the NFL regular season this year, that return of Tom Brady to Foxborough. I think that's going to be an absolutely electric game. And on that Packers front, I really do believe that Jordan Love will be the starting quarterback for that team next year. And it's going to be not only make or break for him, but make or break for the Green Bay Packers front office, really the entire organization the next couple of years. Because if things go wrong with Jordan Love, Devontae Adams could be on his way out. And that means your franchise could be set back the next couple of years. If 2 out of your top 3 players leave within a year of each other, could mean really bad things for Green Bay, or really good things if Jordan Love pans out and plays up to his potential that we saw at Utah State. All right, I want to talk about the NBA now for the rest of this episode, as we're about a week away from the NBA playoffs. The NBA standings are obviously in flux right now. The play-in games are soon and everything like that. I want to talk about a couple of teams that are drawing headlines and I think are really interesting teams to talk about. The first one is the Boston Celtics, and I'll probably spend the most amount of time on them. The Boston Celtics have been sort of an enigma the past couple of seasons. They've had sort of the same core of Tatum, Brown, Smart the last couple of seasons, going back to even the Kyrie and add Gordon Hayward and then Kyrie into that. But those three have been pretty consistent the past 4 or 5 seasons. So is Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge. It's looking more and more like they're going to miss the playoffs this year. Jaylen Brown is out for the year. They have probably the worst bench in the NBA. And now defense, which is something that Brad Stevens has sort of prided himself on. No team had shot over 57% versus the Boston Celtics this year. Miami just went into their building and did it twice when those games really mattered for both teams. They were neck and neck in the standings. And the difference is between Miami and Boston now is that Miami has clinched at least the 6th seed in the East at worst and doesn't have to play in a play-in game. And it's looking like Boston's going to have to play Charlotte, who is only getting healthier because LaMelo is back and potentially Gordon Hayward coming back very, very soon. Now you have to play a really tough opponent in Charlotte in that play-in game. And when you lose that play-in game, if the Celtics had to play the Charlotte Hornets right now, today, They're too injury prone. They don't have enough of a bench to compete with Charlotte. I think the Boston Celtics would miss the playoffs. And if the Boston Celtics miss the playoffs, I think there needs not to blow up the Boston Celtics, but something big has to happen. And I think at least Danny Ainge needs to lose his job. And yes, I understand. Danny Ainge swindled Brooklyn and got all those picks. And yes, Danny Ainge swindled Philadelphia and got Jason Tatum and passed on Markelle Fultz. But we have not talked enough about how badly Danny Ainge butchered the Kyrie Irving situation. He blew up a team that was on the rise in order to add a guy like Kyrie Irving, which eventually that team did better without Kyrie Irving. That team, this core really of Tatum, Brown, and Smart, peaked Jason Tatum's rookie year when they took LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers to 7 games. That is when they peaked. They have not gotten past Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. They've never even been back to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. The Heat beat them in 6 last year, if you remember. So they quite literally peaked that year, and they've only gotten down and worse, and they have all of these draft picks. They have all of this cap space that they got through a trade extension with Gordon Hayward. Danny Ainge didn't use the trade extension on anybody good. He turned down an offer for, apparently it was Victor Oladipo and Miles Turner for Gordon Hayward. He said, no, we want a trade exception from Charlotte. Used it on Evan Fournier, who hasn't been the greatest player in the world, though he's been playing well recently. And again, he did not get enough of the blame for the Kyrie situation blowing up in his face, because Kyrie is doing just fine without Boston. The Brooklyn Nets are the 3rd overall seed, or the 2nd seed in the East right now, and might be the best goddamn team in the NBA. So Kyrie is doing just fine post-Celtics-Kyrie divorce. Danny Ainge and the Celtics are the ones who are struggling. I like Brad Stevens. I think he might be a little bit overrated as a head coach, but I do think he knows how to coach young players and knows how to work with less. He's a guy who can coach yourself into a close game when a lot of your players are injured or something like that. Would Brad Stevens want to partner up with a new general manager? I'm not sure. No, I would not, separate Brown and Tatum. I think that tandem is the only thing the Celtics really have going for them right now. But the Boston Celtics general manager job would be extremely appealing if/when Danny Ainge were to lose his job at the end of this season. They have the most draft picks besides anybody not named the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they have a young superstar, Jason Tatum, who I believe is essentially a more athletic version of Carmelo Anthony. And Carmelo was pretty athletic back in his prime. And Jaylen Brown, who looks like one of the more elite two-way players in this league. So this job actually could be one of the more enticing, if not the most enticing, general manager openings in the last 10 years. Again, they have all of these first-round picks from teams that trades that they've made with Memphis and some other teams as well, which could really lead to an appealing job opening for guys who maybe had some success with past jobs or things like that. I don't know any candidates off the top of my head or anything like that, and there haven't been any rumors that Danny Ainge is going to get fired or anything like that. But just knowing the Boston sports market, the expectations, and again, this team has really underwhelmed and underperformed for Boston Celtics standards the last couple of seasons. They seem to not be able to get over the hump, and they're only trending downwards. Their bench is terrible. And again, their entire offense is Jason Tatum. And now, when the defense is slipping and some of these rookies aren't panning out, guys like Robert Williams, or not Robert Williams, guys like like Peyton Pritchard had a great start to the year. Not so much anymore. Naismith has been shooting well, but not making a major impact like some of these other rookies did coming out of the draft. You saw what Tyler Hero did for the Miami Heat last year. He was the 13th overall pick. Major bench player. Winning the Miami Heat games. Naismith is not winning the Boston Celtics any games. So it's going to be interesting to see how the entire Celtics season plays out from here on out, but they are a team that is clearly trending downward, and it's not looking like it's going to get any better anytime soon. And I think if and when they do miss the playoffs and lose a play-in game to a team like the Charlotte Hornets, somebody has to be held accountable for the underwhelming performances and seasons the last couple of years. I think it starts with Danny Ainge, but it wouldn't surprise me, and I wouldn't necessarily be against the idea of cleaning house when it talks about the front office and head coaching jobs for the Boston Celtics. Get a new head coach in there, get some fresh blood, maybe a guy not from college or something like that. Get a new general manager who can use all of these draft picks and not just draft role players or guys who are coming off the bench. Drafting superstars who can help you win players now, or at least elite role players. Tyler Hero for the Miami Heat isn't going to be some elite James Harden level scorer, but what he can develop into is an elite role player, and he was already making such a big contribution his rookie year. And I understand it might be unfair to put that expectation on some rookies, but guys have to contribute right away, and you're playing for high-end teams like the Boston Celtics, Miami Heat, teams that are expected to make deep playoff runs
each and every season. So if Danny Ainge with all these draft picks, if he gets all the credit for getting all these picks, but he doesn't do anything with them, is he a good GM or bad? I would say he's bad. That got lucky a couple times making trades with some idiotic people, like the people who were running the Brooklyn Nets at the time. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, but I think Danny Ainge needs to be held accountable for the past couple of seasons, specifically if and when the Boston Celtics miss the playoffs this year. Another team in the Eastern Conference that is sort of the flip side of Boston is the Miami Heat, and I don't really know what to make of them. They had such a terrible start to the season. They sort of picked it up post-trading deadline. They added Victor Oladipo, yet he only plays 4 games for them before hurting his quad and is now done for the season. Yet they've won 10 of their last 13. They are potentially going to be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference after starting the season 7-14. And I don't want to doubt Jimmy Butler in the playoffs. And again, I like the Miami Heat. They're probably the deepest team in the league. They have a ton of shooters still. Hero, Robinson, and Nunn, who had really, really tough starts to the season. Maybe it was because of the bubble fatigue, sophomore slumps, whatever it may be. That's all behind them now. All of them are averaging at least 15 points a game the last 5 to 7 games. Duncan Robinson is shooting the lights out right now. So is Kendrick Nunn, by the way. And again, Hero has sort of found his stride too since he got his hair cut. He got a bowl cut, and all of a sudden he's been shooting the lights out of the gym, which is funny to say the least. But what's going to be interesting to see is, can they hang with the big boys again? Can they do what they did in the playoffs last year, which was essentially run through the Eastern Conference? They went all the way to Indiana, completely swept them, beat the Milwaukee Bucks in 5, and beat the Boston Celtics in 6. Can they do that again? I'm not so sure. Philadelphia has made a big improvement. I do think Milwaukee has made a big improvement. But I like the Miami Heat's chances versus anybody. They are a tough, gritted defensive team that has incredible chemistry. This team is essentially the exact same finals team as it was last year, except replace Crowder with Ariza, which I believe is an upgrade. And they have a better backup big now. Last for them, it was Myers Leonard. Now it's Dwayne Dedmon, who has been an elite backup big man for the Miami Heat this year. If the shooting is there, the Miami Heat can beat anybody. East, West, it doesn't matter. But without the shooting there, and when it relies completely on the ISO game of Jimmy Butler, that's when they get into some problems. But I like their chances versus anybody. I have a hard time believing that Jimmy Butler is going to go and be eliminated by his former team, the Philadelphia 76ers. They beat the Milwaukee Bucks last year. I think they could do it again. So if we do end up seeing, and I really hope we see it in the Eastern Conference Finals, a Miami Heat versus Brooklyn Nets series, that's my hope and dream. I think that would be an absolutely electric series to watch for 7 games. And I've already voiced my concerns about Brooklyn with their chemistry. James Harden has played more games for the Houston Rockets this year than he has with both KD and Kyrie on the floor. And we saw how chemistry did the Clippers last year. They got knocked out early because of it. But if Brooklyn were to make the Eastern Conference Finals, I wouldn't be surprised if Miami met them there and we had a battle for the ages of a defensive juggernaut versus an offensive juggernaut. And we would have a ton of threes being launched in that series. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Finally, the final thing that I hope we really do see, I said I was going to talk about the Knicks, but we're not going to have time, unfortunately. I just want to mention quickly, I'm so happy that the Knicks are a good basketball team this year. The NBA is so much better when the mecca of basketball, Madison Square Garden, is jam-packed with people, and Spike Lee is there, and they're hitting, close to game-winning threes of Julius Randle versus the Lakers and things like that. Will they win a championship? No. Will they make it probably past the second round of the playoffs? No, but that is not the point. The point is that they're an extremely fun young team that's only getting better. And I question the Tom Thibodeau signing. I will admit, I was dead wrong on that. I laughed at it. I said it was horrible. I said it was classic New York Knicks. I said he's failed in Minnesota and failed in Chicago. He'll never work. They'll be looking for a guy in 2 years. I got to eat that one. I was completely wrong on that. Tom Thibodeau ended up being the perfect coach for this New York Knicks. Hungry, young, physical defensive team. And Julius Randle is becoming, I just talked about Miami, New York's version of Jimmy Butler. A late bloomer guy who's physical, has expanded his game to shooting to go with already an incredible paint game. Not to mention he's a great defensive player as well. The New York Knicks are so much fun to watch. And the NBA East has been just an absolute roller coaster circus throughout the entire year. But it has been a lot of fun. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Before I let you go, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, follow us on all social media platforms, and leave us a 5-star review. Again, those social media platforms are Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Again, I have been your host, Alex Masferrer. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode, and I will see you all in the next one.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.